for me, when I'm in that second half of the cycle, there's so much space, even though I can feel very active and I can get lots of ideas and it can seem like there's a lot going on. The energy is completely different, because the energy that I would have at the beginning of the cycle, that first half, is, okay, I've got these ideas, now let me go do it. In my Via Negativa, I get these ideas, but I will decide, is that something I need to do now? But applying myself in a way that just feels like that's what's going to give me more space. That's what's going to be more supportive.
Welcome to Wild Flow, the podcast with me, your host, Charlotte Pointeau. I'm a wild feminine cycle coach here for the awakened woman who is ready to reclaim her body, menstrual cycle and feminine power, and to live, love and lead in flow with nature's wisdom. In this podcast, I'll share how you can live in sync with your menstrual cycle and life seasons, heal your relationship with your womb and rites of passages, and embody your wild feminine as a multi-passionate woman in life, mothering and business. It's your time to flourish as a cyclical being in this modern world. Are you ready? Let's flow. Natalie Martin is one of my fellow sister cycle coach mentors on Claire Baker's Cycle Coach, and we met as students together training in her very first round. So I've been so excited to invite Nat onto the podcast to chat about her particular area of passion. So she is a menstrual cycle awareness and empowerment coach and a lover of intuitive movement. Her passion is helping people transform PMS into power and to experience period bliss. We've had such a fun conversation talking about the transitions between the seasons, and how we can support ourselves to move from one half of the cycle into the next. So the Via Negativa phase of the cycle being her particular area that she loves to explore and work with and guide clients with. The second half of the cycle from ovulation back to the bleed. And she really shared some beautiful tools and practices and ways of working with archetypes and looking after ourselves to flourish at this time, and just to really honor what's happening in our bodies and our energy and awareness on that descent, and to do well and to feel well in what can be quite traditionally a challenging part of the cycle. So tune in and listen to this gorgeous conversation with my friend Nat. Welcome, Nat Martin, to the podcast. It's so good to have you here. I've been so looking forward to this chat with you. How are you today?
Oh, I'm really good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really honored to be sitting and talking with you. So yeah, I'm good.
Thank you. Likewise. So I love to start with a cycle check-in. I'd love to hear from you if you're happy to share, and if you have a menstrual cycle, where you're at in your cycle and how that's feeling for you today.
Yeah, so I'm on cycle day 19. So that kind of late summer, early autumn feel. And today I'm feeling good. It's been a few days, the last few days. There's been a lot of grief just around the current situation, and homesickness, obviously being an expat and not being able to go home. And so there's been some real vulnerable moments actually. And today feels like the first day where it's like that big exhale. It's kind of like and that's quite normal for me coming into inner autumn. It usually for me feels like that point where I can just so yeah, it's good.
Yeah, thank you. I so resonate with that, being an expat and homesickness. It's really tender at the minute, especially coming up to like this time of year. At the minute we're recording, we're just crossing into the silly season, into December. And no, I know that back home everything's getting cold, and you said you've got snow outside your window, and here in Australia it's just been really, really wet, and we've just had a couple of warm days, and I always get this weird feeling at this time of year that it's just not quite right. It's not Christmas. It's not I just kind of wish I was back home. But I'm personally today, where am I? Yeah, I started off my cycle with a few days of really light bleeding this time. That was sort of, I was like, was it spotting? Was it not spotting? Like, do you call that day one or do you call that spotting? It was like, so I'm just kind of like, am I on day, what day would I call myself? So I'm just counting those days. I'm not going to call them the start, because it was so light, and I feel like I'm more like day 6 it would put me on. So I'm feeling that as well, feeling like I'm just coming out of like the deep dark slowness of like the bleed and that moon cave hibernation, and just starting to have a bit more energy. And I've been doing things like hoovering the house earlier on, where I just refuse to do that when I'm bleeding. I'm like, I can't do anything. And just, I was in the garden the last couple of days and like doing some more physical work, but still feeling really tired with it. So it's like, that constant reminder. I get like a morning burst of energy, and then the afternoon I'm absolutely worn out. And it's good in a way. It keeps me slow. It stops me going too hard. So it's interesting. We're at opposite poles of our cycles, which I just, really love to get a sense of where, you, like the guests, are at, and where I'm at, and how that fits together, and how that might influence the energy of our conversation, because it's really interesting to note. So yeah.
And these transitional days, the kind of in between days, are very interesting to navigate, and also very interesting to navigate between each season. The transition from inner winter to inner spring, and inner summer to inner autumn, and it's so interesting that the different energies that are there. So yeah, it's nice to hear where you are as well, and somehow I can totally relate to that feeling of slowness. It's just in the opposite direction for me. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah. And what you said then about transitions is really, it's something that I've been really looking at a lot, and trying to understand mine and pinpoint when those days are. And it's because I'm having quite long and then irregular, like very irregular cycles at the minute. It's just kind of changing quite a lot. So, I don't have that, like that definite sense of exactly which days of my cycle those transitions are, and which on this day I'm going to be in that season, or watch out for these days. It's very much like a day-to-day checking in and questioning and noticing and honoring. And so, and each cycle, it's really changing because it's fluctuated so much. And so I've really been able to notice how I felt these last couple of days, and definitely feel like these are transitional days. But at the same time, I'm having really slow springs, and it's been quite long as well. So really noticing that each season definitely has like a front half and a back half, and they can be really different as well. You said at the start about, you being in late summer now, and as being different to early summer, and that transition into autumn. And I'd love to hear how you're supporting yourself through your current transition into, from the back half of summer into the first half of autumn.
Well, traditionally, for me at least, inner summer was really awful, to be honest. Like that was the main reason why I got into menstrual cycle awareness, because I kept hearing about how amazing it is, and I'm like, this is not my experience at all. And I would say that for the last, where are we? December almost. So I would say actually pretty much for all of this year, bar 1 or 2 months, I've had that good inner summer feeling. But I know that as soon as there's too much going on, as soon as I'm working too hard, or I'm not giving myself enough sleep, or there's a lot of stress from whatever's going on at the time, that's when I really feel this early summer and late summer, because it's kind of like there is, as soon as I've ovulated, or maybe the day after, there's this and in the times when there's not really much going on and I can just enjoy it, which for me is what summer is all about. I'm a total summer, put me in sunshine and hot weather and it's just like, ease. As soon as that's happening for me in life, it reflects in my cycle. And that whole inner summer period is just lovely. And I've got all the energy that I need. And so the transition into autumn in those times is very much, it's a very smooth transition. It's just, okay, I'm going from being this inner summer queen energy to now like, okay, now it's time to just turn away. Whereas in instances like this cycle, where I've had struggles going on, internal struggles, and feeling quite vulnerable, there's a well. It feels like just walking along and falling into a well that you didn't know was there, and just being raw and tender. And for me, the biggest thing that's helped is actually just speaking it through with my partner. And I didn't tell him I'm in my Emma summer, this is what's going on, but just talking about like actually what is happening for me in that moment. And I'm very fortunate that I'm able to shift things around. So yesterday I wanted to get a lot of stuff done and I just didn't. I was like, I need to tend to myself today. What do I need to do? And it was a very quote unquote superficial day for me yesterday. I did my hair, I did my nails, I put a face mask on, I watched a crappy Netflix film, just, like that very superficial level of self-care, let's say, as opposed to the inner work that might class as self-care, because that's what my queen needed yesterday, so that it could give way to what I am calling at the moment the keeper, which is my inner autumn archetype. And it's like a relay race, right? You either have a smooth transition or you have one that's a bit fumbly
and you drop the baton.
Someone drops the baton and it's just, or someone falls over and it's just like, what's happening? So yeah, I think it's for me, it's kind of like what you said, which I loved. It's this practice of checking in every day and reacting to what is happening on that day. Because I think what definitely happened for me, and what I see happen with my clients, is that you get into the practice of tracking your cycle and understanding how you feel in any given place and what the days, the rocky transition days are and all of that. And there can be this tendency to kind of automate. And the tracking then just becomes this thing that you do to confirm what you already know. And when you're having these times of like you with your irregular cycle right now, or times when life is just really testing you in so many ways, and your cycle is not behaving in the way that it's supposed to, it forces you to actually do the work, as in stop. I was going to say stop, look, listen. I think only the Brits will get that, but like really stop.
It's true though, right?
What's happening?
Yeah, I love that. Yes. Yeah.
So
so
for me,
right.
it's become a practice of really every day actually checking in, really, and seeing what do I need, and just being tender and vulnerable, and leaning into support where it's possible.
Yeah. I really love that point you just made there about like automating and how it can be like, you get exactly what you said about getting to know it being quite predictable, and then bang, it's like not, and it's like, what's going on? And it forcing us to come back and do that work. I think that's really, having that curiosity, I think is really powerful, and not assuming that it's just going to be the same all the time, and really, really tuning in. And I think that's such a powerful thing. Yeah, I love that. There's a couple of things in there I like want to ask you, like my brain's like, phew. But you really piqued my interest with you said about the archetypes that you're working with, and your summer is the queen and your autumn is the keeper. I'd love to hear more, and I know particularly that you really love I call it like the back half of the cycle, like the second half of the cycle, like the descent from summer down to the bleed. And, the inner autumn is like your particular area of passion. So I would really love, if you're happy to share a bit more about who the keeper is. Tell me.
Who is the keeper? She's quite new, actually. It's funny because I've been really drawn to, I mean, I love the inner seasons, the framework of the inner seasons, but I mean, I'm a writer as well. So for me, archetypes are like characters that you can build worlds with. And I was thinking, like literally just a few days ago, what is the inner autumn energy for me? I think that, everyone knows about the wild woman. And for me, I always felt quite distant from that. And I've definitely, I remember way at the back at the beginning, I was exchanging voice messages with one of the other girls from our cohort. And we were having a conversation about the wild woman. And I said, I just don't relate to the wild woman archetype at all, because for me, it's about this kind of very, just wild, primal, sexual energy that I really just did not identify with at all. And I've definitely gotten closer to that. But for me, the inner autumn, the energy that I feel is about protection, and not the kind of protection that you might give being a mother, for example, but like self protection. It's about protecting your boundaries, protecting your energy, protecting your dreams and your wishes, and just protection of yourself. When you think about the inner critic, which is for some people just exceptionally loud in the premenstrual phase, criticism, your ego, as damaging as it can be sometimes, like it's serving a really important purpose, which is to protect you. How, the level to which it's protecting you and whether it's warranted and all of that is something else. But essentially, your critique of yourself is to protect you from doing something where you're going to be exposed or feel stupid or fail or whatever it might be. And so when I was thinking about, okay, what is the energy of that? Actually, for me, it feels like a guard. It feels like a keeper of and a keeper of the truth as well. And I don't mean that as in like lying. I mean holding the truth. So this is something that I'm playing with at the moment, and just kind of fleshing out. And I'm slowly. It's interesting that I started with the queen first as my version of the inner archetype, but I feel like the typical maiden mother, wild woman, crone, it's great, but I feel like there's so much more room for interpretation in all of them. So yeah, that's what my keep is about. It's about keeping what's dear and important. Yeah.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And I relate to it so much. I think you've just summed up how I feel in my inner autumn. Like I feel much more sensitive, but I bring in a lot more awareness. Like I allow myself to be, I think because of, connecting with my cycle and learning, about cycle awareness and learning about what potentially can happen, like on the positive and the negative sides, in that phase, I've become really aware of like how I respond, how I hold myself, how I look after myself, how I speak, what I say, like my relationships, all of it. Because I guess I'm aware that, I'm aware that by not being aware, you can so easily, get to a point of, where things don't look particularly pretty, and you look back and you're like, what happened? That was going so well. So, I try to be really self-aware in that time. And, because, I do have the potential to lash out more, at my husband and kids when I like just desperately want some space. And the truth kind of, like the doesn't mean it's the truth, but my truth, the way I'm feeling like in my body, and the things that you might not normally say kind of slip out a little bit at this time as well. And I try to really protect my energy. And so I just really, there were like the three things that really stood out to me. It's like the truth keeper, and like the protectress, maybe, as like of yourself, like with a boundary and like a bubble of like, I'm not letting you in, and this is what I need. And you have a choice of like what you invite into your space and your time and all of that. Obviously, if you've got little people or people who need you and whatever, that's, but there's a way of kind of extending the size of that bubble a bit. And what was the other thing? I've just lost it now. I felt like there were three things. But anyway, I just really resonate with what you were saying about the keeper. I just have see this figure like with this hooded cloak on, and she's like strong and
with
like
staff.
Like she's not doing anything. She's not wild and big in force and energy, but she's strong, and she doesn't need to. This is just the vision I have. She doesn't need to do too much or say too much. It's like, she can be really powerful.
Yeah.
With just her presence.
Yeah, that's exactly how I visualize her as well. And I think for me, it just feels more relatable than someone who, I'm quite like gregarious at nature, and I can take up a lot of space, but in my inner autumn, it doesn't feel like that kind of unleashed. It's unleashed but contained in a way. And maybe it's a personality thing as well. But I was watching The Neverending Story the other day because it's my favorite film, and
because why not?
Our internet cut out, and so I was like, okay, I actually can't do any work, and I wasn't in the mood to read. And like, it's the energy of the Southern Oracle. Don't know if you remember that part where Atreyu is on his way, and there are these two blue kind of sphinxes. And it's that's the energy that I think about. It's that kind of, when you think of the Sphinx, it's a very commanding presence, but it's not doing anything, and it's not speaking anything, but it's protecting, it's keeping. So this is the energy at the moment I'm really feeling into. And it might change in a few cycles. I might, feel more at home with the enchantress or the sorceress or the wild woman. But I think it's fun to just actually see what's the energy for me. How do I feel in that time, and how can I then relate it to an archetype so that I can learn more about it and learn more about myself? So fascinating.
That's magic, what you just said about, instead of us having to take on these archetypes that are given to us, that are somebody else's vision and interpretation, the invitation to make our own like vision and flesh out and make real like who that is for ourselves, and so we can learn about ourselves in that process. That's just that's so beautiful. Now I love that. I really think that's amazing.
It's just so cool. You can do it with everything, like, I love astrology, but I'm not an astrologer by any means. But if you're an astrologer, I'm quite sure that you could relate a different planet to each phase of the cycle, or it's just your way of interpreting. And it's great to learn things and to learn these frameworks and to apply them, but if they don't fit for you, And don't feel like in my opinion anyway, don't feel like you're always the devil's advocate. Don't feel like you have to take it.
Yeah,
Go out there and find your own.
Yeah. But I think that's like taking, I always say, it's connecting with your own unique cycle. Like, it's not just doing learning the textbook and then applying that and then trying to fit yourself into that box. It's like, we don't need to do that. We can just look at what our experience is, and that being enough, and that being truth, and that being like learning that and exploring that and being curious to how that might change or stay the same, like you say. That's super powerful and insightful and empowering. It's just amazing. So you also mentioned to me as like one of the things that you really love to work with is the idea of the via negativa of the cycle. And I actually went and Googled that today. I was like, what does this mean according to Google? And it was really interesting what came up. So I just wanted to share that apparently it was originally described by Dionysus in circa 500 CE. And it was used originally to describe, it was in relation to Christian theology, to explain what God is by focusing on what he isn't. And so apparently in theology and philosophy, it's the focus on what something is not. It's in action, it's a recipe for what to avoid, what not to do. It's like subtraction instead of addition. And of course, you and I have heard about it in relation to the book, I'm presuming that, the book Wild Power. Yep. And I found this quote by this description by Alexandra Pope, who is one of the writers and creators of Wild Power and the Red School. And she says that the application of this theory to the menstrual cycle, she says the creative energy or tendency of the first half of the cycle, so from the bleed to ovulation, is the via positiva, and that's the way of the masculine. It's your ability to go out and do things, set goals, set agenda, to impose your agenda on the world. It's one way of creating, and it's a super energy. The creative energy or tendency of the second half of the cycle, so from ovulation back through the premenstruum to the bleed, they call the via negativa, the way of the feminine. She said, we don't know how to celebrate this creative way in our society. It's about the power of the encounter, the power of co-creation, not about imposing your agenda, but rather unfolding what wants to come through, to work in collaboration. And she also said, it's not about one way being better than the other. They both need each other to have their full brilliance. And as a woman, you are graced, as a person with a menstrual cycle, you're graced with being educated in the via positiva and the via negativa, and learning how to use and manage their unique powers is the gift of menstrual cycle awareness. What do you take to that? And what's your what's your take on the via negativa? I'd love to hear what it means to you, and why is this something that you love to work with so much?
Well, first of all, I actually didn't know that quote from Dionysus, however you say it, I don't know his name. But to me, it makes total sense, right? Because it sounds like it's exactly what Alexandra Pope was talking about. It's this action of not doing, not adding to, so that you can uncover the truth about God, yourself, whatever. And I 100% agree, obviously, with Alexandra's words that this is a part of the cycle that generally is not celebrated, and that needs to have more, I don't want to necessarily say airtime, but it needs to have more space, because I think as a collective, we are basically just doing too much, always. So, and we know that when you're constantly doing, you don't have time to listen or feel, or, if you're constantly talking in a conversation, you don't have time to listen. So all of that from both of them makes total sense. And for me, The Via Negativa, when I think about what it is, it feels very spacious. It feels like when you see those images from the Hubble telescope, and it's just like, it looks like empty space, but it isn't, because it's like filled with just stars and planets and stardust and things that we can't even see and things that we don't even know, and we don't actually know like how spacious it is, because we don't know what's the borders of space, and is there a border of space, and what can I get from that. Like it's this kind of vortex that you can just kind of fall into and uncover something new every time. That's how I feel about the Via Negativa. And in terms of why I love to work with it, it's so funny, because I thought that coming into this work, I would be working with people who were experiencing rough inner summers like I was, because, you're usually taught when you're doing your coaching training that, you teach from an embodied place and you teach what you know. And most of the time you're going to be working with people who had the same struggles that you did and all of that. But that was just not what was happening, like at all. The people who I was working with, they all struggled with, it's not the second half of the cycle. The Via Negativa is ovulation until like the first couple of days of the bleed, let's say. But just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to say second half of the cycle. They were really struggling with that, and especially the premenstrual phase, which is not a massive surprise, right? Because we know that it's a difficult place for a lot of people to be in. And so I was working with these people and just, loving it and finding out at the same time, because so often it's reflecting, things back onto you that, gosh, I really love this place. And I already knew that I felt very clear and calm and could do, like so many things in a way that was creative, but more powerful. But I also just realized that for me, when I'm in that second half of the cycle, there's so much space, even though I can feel very active and I can get lots of ideas and it can seem like there's a lot going on. The energy is completely different, because the energy that I would have at the beginning of the cycle, that first half, is, okay, I've got these ideas, now let me go do it. For example, in my inner spring, this cycle, I made 9 reels and did some crazy stuff, and it was 11 o'clock in the morning. And it was just like, I've got these ideas, let's go do it. Whereas in my Via Negativa, I get these ideas, but I will decide, is that something I need to do now? It's not even, it doesn't even feel like a decision anymore. It's just like absorbing and downloading of ideas and all kinds of creative stuff, but applying myself in a way that just feels like that's what's going to give me more space. That's what's going to be more supportive. And this is something that's come about through learning, through reading, through coaching, and experimenting. Like, okay, what do I feel like doing today? I'm on day 19 and it's late summer / early autumn. What do I feel like doing today? I've got so much to do. I've got a book to write. I've got like tons of stuff. But actually today, I feel like I want to sit down and get to grips with my finances. I want to sit down and just do some journaling. And it's still doing the work, but it's doing the work in a different way. It's not imposing, like Alexandra Pope says, it's not about imposing your will to make things happen. It's about surrendering to allow things to happen. So that's what the Via Negativa is for me. It's about space and depth.
Yeah. Space and depth. Yeah. So tell me a little bit, or just describe for somebody who's listening, who's maybe not completely across like what the challenges of the premenstrual phase can be, and like where that can come from. Or if somebody's experiencing this, like it can be so powerful to hear it affirmed in other people. I'd love just to hear from you what sort of challenges you see coming up with the people that you're working with. And how they take on, you know, this idea of space, like how that is for them to implement, like practically in this data, you know, in this world we live in, where that's really quite challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, it is challenging. So the first question was to answer the challenges that can come up in the premenstrual phase, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I just thought I'd throw both of them at you.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think most people know that the premenstrual phase and PMS, it's like a huge range of things, right? So it can be the physical, sore breasts, headaches, heaviness, bloating. It can be the emotional, you know, the kind of sadness or frustration or jealousy or scarcity. And it can be the mental, right? So there will be people who, and it's not PMDD, which is something different, but there will be people who just really struggle mentally with anxiety or depression. And so PMS is like, maybe that's the first thing that to say that I didn't actually know until we learned it, is that PMS, it's not a condition, it's a cluster of symptoms. So, and I think that's, for me, that was like a real aha moment, because the way that we talk about PMS makes it sound like it's something that you have that's a part of having a cycle. But when you understand that it isn't, and that it's, you know, a cluster of symptoms that will look different for everyone, it's something in my mind, it makes it easier to pick apart. You know, it's not this, what's the English word? Best. I've completely forgotten the English word. How terrible is that? It's not this, you know, like big ball of stuckness. I can't remember the English word. It's something that you can actually pick apart. So first thing to understand is that your PMS will probably look different to anyone else's. And this is the beauty of tracking and just taking a moment each day to check in. How do I feel? Doesn't have to make sense. You know, your PMS might be that you feel intense jealousy when you're in your premenstrual phase of your partner, of your friends, of, you know, the person on Instagram who's living this, like, you know, beautiful beach life. So premenstrual symptoms, PMS, will look different for everyone. So that's what I would say to answer your first question. And then in terms of what people have come to me with, there's been a bit of a range from generally feeling disconnected and a bit kind of ungrounded, and just, you know, when you think about, or at least when I think about the feelings of panic that come up sometimes, and anxiety, it can feel a bit like, you know, not having an anchor, not being tethered to anything, and just feeling lost, basically. And then I've also worked with people who encounter big problems in their relationship every inner autumn, feeling needy, feeling jealous, feeling like they're not being seen enough or supported enough. And then there's also been feelings of just, I hate my job, I hate my life, I want more, basically. And so the first thing when it comes to, in my opinion, dealing with anything, is to make space to really be with it. And most of the time when we experience something that doesn't feel nice, we're not like, oh yeah, let me feel
welcome,
let me feel that.
yeah.
It's usually not what's happening. It's usually like, I don't want to feel that, let me get away from it. And so we do a lot of avoidance. And so for me, the very first act is take the time to sit and be with it. And it doesn't mean having to sit for the whole day. You know, it might mean, I'm feeling intense rage about something right now. Let me just, instead of, I don't know, picking up my phone to go and look at something, or going outside in the hopes of bumping into someone that I know on the street, it's a case of, okay, let me just what am I feeling rage about? Where am I feeling it in my body? Like just giving it a little bit more space, 1% more space. And the more space you give it, the more you can investigate what's going on. So that's the first thing that I always do. I'm always asking, like, what exactly is happening here? And there's different ways we can do that, right? Especially if you're in that particular phase, in that particular session, you can really go into it with what's happening in the body and so on. And I think also just there's a tendency to, what I've seen is there's a tendency for people to bulk the most, so not including work, but including everything else that you might have to do. People like to bulk that in one particular part of their cycle where they tend to feel good, whether it's in a summer, in an autumn, in a winter, whatever. It's like, well, I know that I tend to feel good around that time, so I'm going to put all the things that need to be done there, which of course doesn't work because we have busy lives. And so things spill out into other parts of the cycle. And before you know it, it's just like this big chaotic mess. Whereas when you can start to respect the fact that it's not about doing things in a certain way, it's about having a different kind of energy to the way that you apply yourself to things, it frees up more space. And in terms of splitting that between the via positiva and the via negativa, that's something that usually comes a little bit later because it's quite a lot to overload, someone who potentially is quite new to menstrual cycle awareness. But it's the gateway for me is always about prioritizing rest. As soon as you get into the via negativa, whether it's 5 minutes extra sleep a day or really prioritizing rest over your menstrual phase, because it just automatically seeps out. And for me, what I've noticed is that is usually the part of the cycle where people need more space. They need more space while they're bleeding because they're tired and they're heavy and they just want to sleep, and they need more space in their premenstrual phase because that's usually just what we need. We just need to not listen to people quite so much. And so you're not like asking them to do something that feels fundamentally difficult. It's actually feeding into what their needs are anyway.
Gorgeous.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I love that description. Yeah. I think it's really helpful to really spell that out, because I think when we can say space, and that can be interpreted a few ways. And I think the sort of, a busy person would hear that and be like, oh, I don't have time for space. And it's like, it's in the pockets, it's in the moments, it's in the noticing and the feeling and the, and the not numbing out or overfilling, like you say, so really hearing you say space for you is allowing the feelings, scheduling, not letting everything really cram up that time, and really prioritizing rest as well. I think that's simple but doable, and rest can be, like you said, even with the 1%, just those little moments of choosing to rest instead of choosing to do again. And it can make such a difference. I find that that's exactly what I try to welcome in, and when I feel like I've crossed over into that part of my cycle, it's like, I can have this tendency to want to kind of rush and finish things off and get it all tied up and everything. And, that can be a natural energy of that part of the cycle for some people, but, it's really important to balance that. And it's like coming back to the keeper of, keeper of balance and the keeper of space. And, I think that's such a beautiful description. So, I just wanted to add there, because it was a good point that you made, this energy of I need to get things done and wrapped up. And again, I know that I've been guilty of that when I've been trying to have this perfect menstrual cycle aware cycle, because we're told that, your premenstrual phase, things going on, but it's
also about preparing for your bleed, right? So, tying up loose ends and batch cooking and all this stuff, which is good. Like it's gold actually. But as soon as it starts to take on this, like, I need to do this, I must do this very harried energy, for me, that's slipping already back into the via positiva energy. It's this kind of like, I need to do it because I am woman or I am whatever, right? It's like, this is what I need. Whereas again, like bringing in that keeper energy, it's like, okay, what can I do within the time and space that I have to do it? How can I not be quite so strict with myself, right? For example, if I'm in my premenstrual phase and I'm like, okay, I know that I'm going to want to have a curry when I'm having my period, then I'm going to like pre-batch cook this thing. And then, maybe I'll also make this, and maybe I'll also make that. And then I'm kind of like in this big stress. It's like, actually, what's important for me here? And do I have to do it all before this next bleed? Like, is it necessary? The keeper of your sanity, is it necessary for you to go to this level of extreme, to have this quote unquote perfect pre-set up bleed? Probably the answer most of the time is no, it's not necessary. It's a nice to have. But it's not necessary. I don't need to push. I don't need to have that forceful energy of I'm going to make this happen. So again, it's that kind of cultivation of mindset. And one of the ways that they describe it in Wild Power is that it's just two flows of energy, right? So you've got the doing energy, you've got the being energy, you've got the lighter energy, you've got the heavier energy. And as for me, when I think into the via positiva mindset, it's coming back to that feeling of exhale. It's like, okay, yes, I can feel creative, and yes, I can do this, and yes, I can do that, but it's not about pushing. It's about allowing. And it's a very subtle thing that can take some time to kind of get that that's what it feels like. But it's an important distinction to make, I think, because especially if you're someone like me who does get all the ideas and feels good, you have to remind yourself, what are the priorities? And do I have to do all this now?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Giving yourself grace and knowing there's a time, there'll always be time for that. We don't have to do it all right now. And there's a time in the cycle for these things, but if it doesn't feel good for us, that's it, always coming back to like, does it feel good? Does it feel right for you today? Instead of, well, this is the time of my cycle to do this and get shit done. It's like, no, if you, once you feel, I love that, once you feel like you're tipping into that doing energy, using that as a nudge, like a mirror, a reminder to come back into that flowing energy of just receiving and just being. Love it. Nat, cheeky question, just curious, have you got an archetype for the bleed?
You know what? I don't. I've been really like, the crone doesn't really fit with me. I just don't like I know that that's not what the word meant originally. Like, I know it comes from the keeper of time. But I don't like the crone. The wise woman feels somehow a bit not deep enough. Like, doesn't express the depth. At the moment, I like the oracle. But again, it somehow doesn't quite have that depth. So I'm not sure yet. I feel like that's clearly, I seem to be working around the cycle in that way.
Yeah.
The queen and the keeper. So maybe that's what will come next. But I would say at the moment, I'm tapping into the idea of the oracle just because it feels like it encapsulates the kind of that real wisdom and an insight and knowing that comes with the bleed. But I need the depth.
Mm.
It's not quite there
Mm.
yet.
Yeah, I really hear you with that too. And, you know, you saying this has really made me kind of go, yeah, like I love the archetypes. I really adore them. But, you know, I think there's so much in, you know, like I already said, breaking away from that and going like, how can we paint like a richer picture that really lights up a feeling within of
Hmm.
like, yes, like that feels like a match, like it's like truth and it feels right. And I don't feel that with the Maiden Mother Crone. What
Mm.
did I miss? Wise woman. I think, you know, you're saying oracle and just had this word flash up and it was like mystic. And I think for
Mm.
me, it's I don't know if that's the right word or not, but the energy of like, you know, it's the magic and the mystery of the bleed and that kind of visioning and intuition and seeing and sensing really
Yeah.
comes alive for me in the dreaming. And oracle,
Mm.
I really love that too. So yeah, I'm excited to hear what's going to come through for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really cool thing when you really start to think into like, how do I feel? What do I like? What's the energy? And yeah, I think it will be closely tied to my idea of temple time. That's for sure. Like, you know, my bleed is just the time for like complete like Cleopatra goddess energy.
I love that.
But I
Yes.
don't know, you know, it's like, okay, I need to find a way to somehow like, yeah, get that kind of energy distilled into one word. It's so much fun, I think,
Mm.
to play around with that and yeah, not to feel like you have to take this word that maybe doesn't mean anything. And I mean, you know, to be honest, like the crone, that's not a nice word, really. It doesn't conjure up any kind of nice, it doesn't conjure up any respect for me. You know, it's a kind of, yeah, it feels quite derogatory. So yeah, it's the bleed archetype is the one that's coming next, I can feel.
Juicy. Yeah. And then in the new year, so you said that you're putting together a like an embodied exploration with the archetypes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is something that came through to me on my last bleed. And, you know, I was thinking, okay, everyone, not everyone, but at least the people that I'm tending to work with, they're quite down with the seasons. And of course, I'm all about like just exploring what's happening in the body and movement. And I love music to represent different things. And I'm a writer, so I love creating characters. And I was like, gosh, it would be so lovely to kind of roll all of this into an exploration. That's exactly it. So um, I'm still formulating all of the finer details in my mind, but the idea is basically to have a journey through each archetype and to explore also as we've been talking about what your own archetypes for inner seasons are, because I can give a course and talk about, you know, the keeper, the oracle, the mother, whatever, you know, whatever I want to call them, but that might not resonate.
Mm.
So for me, it's going to be a very embodied course, not so much looking at a screen and you know seeing a presentation, but actually feeling into the body and feeling okay. When you think about the word wild woman, what does that bring up in your body? What does it bring up in your mind? What colors, what textures? And when you think about the keeper, what comes up in your mind? And if you were to come up with your own, how would that feel? So my wish is that people come away from that feeling like they have got to meet maybe just a slither of their
Mm.
own archetype for each season and to really connect with that archetype through their body, through music, through movement. Because I just find it's such an amazing system. And I'm reading a book at the moment where it's very much about the Greek goddesses and how they show up in the psyches of women and people who menstruate generally, and even just I mean, I love Greek mythology anyway. It's something that in another life I would probably have studied and totally geeked out on. But just, really understanding, like, okay, the Artemis energy, the maiden energy, how does that actually show up in the life of someone who's very in their inner Artemis? How does it show up in how they go to school, how they work, how they relate, how they parent? It's so fascinating. So yeah, it's it'll be 4, maybe even 5 weeks, and very much a live and experiential way of learning, as opposed to a course where it's kind of learning something from a screen and gaining knowledge. It's going to be much more about embodiment as opposed to stereotypical brain learning, if that makes sense. I'm really excited about it. I'm like, oh yes.
It sounds amazing. I really love the sound of it. I've just done something like kind of not similar, but similar-ish with the maiden. This last month we've been doing the maiden and like exploring in that kind of, like you say, the experiential way, and providing rituals and creative practices and embodied practices to really play with that and explore and look at how, through our menarche as well and our rites of passages and how it showed up. And I've just really appreciated, like for me personally, putting that together was just such a joy and like really encouraged my creativity. But, being able to, to play with that was one archetype. But, like you say, like there's so much power in, not being told like what it is, what it means, like, but really like trying it on and feeling into like what it means and looks like and feels like for you. I think it's really really special. So I'm really excited to see what you come up with, and keep us posted, because I really want to hear more about it, and might even join in myself. So where can we find out more? Like where can people connect with you so that if they want to find out more, they can do.
Yeah. So my mailing list is the place where I show up every single week, and I'm usually sharing a little bit more. It's a different kind of sharing than my Instagram. Let's say I don't want to say that it's necessarily more personal, because I'm quite open. I think I'm definitely not one person on screen, one person off screen. But my mailing list would be the best place for those people who want to have a weekly check-in, who aren't on social media, and who kind of like to be able to take things in their own pace. So mailing list. And then those people who are on Instagram, you can find me on there, natalie.kmartin. Mailing list, you can join up via nataliekmartin.com. And those are the two main places at the moment.
Cool. Yeah. I'll pop those links in the show notes. So go check that out, because she shares really beautifully on Instagram. And I think, your work's really special. So I just got one last question for you. I just love to ask all of my beautiful guests, just to highlight for us, connecting in with your cycle and your body. What's the greatest gift that's given you?
The greatest gift that it's given me, I think I would have to say it's given me a feeling of just being good with things. It's hard to kind of encapsulate it all in one go. There's the feeling of understanding, okay, like this is the way that things are, and I have something that I can flow with. But also just in general with life, as we were talking about just before we went live, like everything is in a cycle, everything. So even if you feel like scraping yourself off the floor one day, you know that it's going to come around to a time where you're going to feel amazing. And that has given a lot of just ease and a lot more trust and a lot more resilience, actually. So yeah, I think just being good, like I'm good with things. It's not always easy. It doesn't mean that you just take things lying down, but I'm good.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nat. I've really loved our conversation.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.